Good afternoon, and welcome back to another session on my Declassified Caribbean channel and news commentary. Now, today we're going to look at another exciting topic, maybe exciting for those who are, particularly watching what is happening in the world right now. For those of you who like entertainment, perhaps it won't be exciting. But for those of us who understand what lies ahead, and what lies ahead is not very pretty, it's a hideous sight. This will be exciting in the sense that you realize that you're not only crazy, you're not the only one who people might deem to be crazy, right? But these things are really happening right before our eyes. And we're going to be looking at the AI lockdowns and the whole matter of Ebola and what that might mean for the wider society. Now, what if the future of government control does not arrive through war, but through endless emergencies? What if every new crisis, whether disease outbreaks, climate disasters, cyber attacks, and people don't talk about that often, or AI threats, becomes the justification for more surveillance, more restrictions, and more centralized power? From Ebola to climate lockdown discussions to AI-powered monitoring systems. Are we entering a new age of permanent emergency rule? And more importantly, could the Caribbean become one of the easiest regions to control? Welcome to Declassified Caribbean. Make sure that you like and you share and you subscribe. For years, governments told populations that emergency powers were temporary. Temporary during pandemics, temporary during security threats, temporary during natural disasters. But history shows something dangerous. Governments rarely surrender powers once they gain them, and there's no way of walking them back. Very important that you understand that. And now with artificial intelligence, digital ID systems, predictive policing, climate emergency declarations, and disease surveillance expanding worldwide, many people are beginning to ask, is the world preparing for a future where emergency rule never truly ends? This is something that we have to think about. And were the COVID lockdowns just temporary? Did they really end? And from the Brownstone Journal or News Journal, that's the paper that is run by Jeffrey Tucker of Texas. He's here suggesting that they did not end. Okay. And did I find the article seem that I have come off it? Yeah. He's saying Jeffrey Brown said, observe the economic fallout 6 years later. And he says, many people want to be done with COVID lockdowns as a topic. The trouble is that COVID lockdowns are not done with us. Nothing like this had ever been tried in real life, a forced stoppage of most human activity as it affects the material and social world. The impact would be far-reaching, long-lasting, and devastating, one of the more significant calamities of modern times. Prevailing economic weakness and resulting stagnation for living standards is only one result. It's nowhere near over. So he's suggesting here that the COVID-19 lockdowns are nowhere over. They were never over. They were never meant to be terminated. Okay, we are continuing them. You might not be locked down now, but as soon as another crisis comes, the government is going to lock you down. And oftentimes we blame government, but we ought to blame ourselves. And we must call a spade at this moment, because many of the times we don't keep alert abreast of what is happening in the world. People don't want to read, people don't want to understand what is happening in the world. They just want to be in their own narrow world. Now, for those of us who are saying, don't take the V, do not comply with government lockdowns, many of you did. And as a result of that, you have to blame yourselves for that. You can't blame government. If we had 90% non-compliance in the COVID lockdowns and the V's that followed after them, we would not have been in this situation. So oftentimes, many people are looking at governments to vote in and to vote out, but that is not going to solve the problem. The problem lies at our doorsteps in the sense that we don't want to be informed. Neither are we informed people. The internet now is so loud that many people are shouting, and people tend to hear the shouts that are half truths and lies. They don't want to hear the full truth. And this is what is happening now. So, what is going to happen again? Half truths and lies are what will be disseminated in the media, whether the independent media or mainstream media, and many people are going to be deceived. Now, he suggests here the Friday, March 6, 2026 jobs report from the Bureau of Labor Statistics was far more grim than anyone expected. Employers shed 92,000 positions for the month as the unemployment rate ticked slightly higher to 4.4%. December and January jobs growth was revised down by 69,000. Okay? So the more alarming fact, which you can peruse at B1, is that these losses were unconstrained. So we're seeing as a result of that, of COVID-19, it is still bearing down on economic performance and economic, health, economic well-being, economic viability. There's nothing to be gained by blaming AI, he's saying here. These are not jobs AI can do. Labor costs eat into profitability, so maintaining it requires overloading as much as possible to deal with hard times. He says here, more revealing are numbers of employment/population ratios. They were dealt a huge hit with lockdowns, obviously, and have not regained their strength going from 2019. It amounts to a permanent downshift. Every time we see gains here, the gravity of the economic environment pushes them down again. Very important that you understand that. Now we see this guy here who is the man of sin, right? One of the most, if not, he is the most. I shouldn't say one of the most, he is the most. Well, I would say the Black Pope is, but the White Pope is second in command in terms of being evil. Pope Leo demands AI rules to safeguard humanity before it's too late. The pontiff warns that artificial intelligence could exacerbate inequality, deepen social fragmentation, and weaken moral responsibility unless it is constrained. Right? And one of these days, I'm going to do a video and let you know the Vatican controls all of these things, because the Vatican controls much of the economic infrastructure of our world. Many people don't know that. They think the United States does, or the City of London also, but it's not the Vatican. Remember now that the Vatican cannot be audited, and people don't know how much wealth they own. Pope Leo XIV on Monday laid out an ambitious vision for regulating artificial intelligence, challenging world leaders locked in a global AI race fueled by military and economic rivalry. In an authoritative papal document known as an encyclical, that they always write these encyclicals, a papal letter outlining the church's perspective on a key topic, Leo warned AI could exacerbate inequality, deepen social fragmentation, and weaken moral responsibility if not constrained by ethical limits and democratic oversight. Now, when we think of the Vatican, do we think of ethical limits and democratic oversight? I don't think so. The pontiff called on countries to intervene and regulate artificial intelligence to safeguard humanity and urged global leaders to act before the technology outruns political control. So even this man of sin recognizes that AI can become unethical, right? And we have to find some way of regulating the system. Some people are styling or describing AI as a new species, as it were, right? Is it? Leo condemned a tech development race he described as driven by a dehumanizing ambition to develop ever more powerful technologies or to secure control over them. The pontiff said the contest was being fought by opposing imperialisms, powers that wish to preserve their supremacy, and those that aspire to seize that supremacy. So they are in a competition over our lives, and many of us, our lives are going to be uprooted. Some of us, our lives have already been uprooted by what is happening in the world, but darker days lie ahead. When Ebola outbreaks captured global attention years ago, fear spread rapidly across the world. Images of hazmat suits, military quarantine zones, border screenings, airport monitoring, and emergency health restrictions became normalized almost overnight. And for those of you who think that we're just creating an alarm, the New York Times, your favorite paper, right, was suggesting, are we ready for another pandemic lockdown? This morning, there was an article in the New York Times. You can go and read your New York Times, which is your favorite paper on the earth, isn't it? People accepted extraordinary government actions because they believed survival required it. And this is important to understand. Fear changes what populations are willing to tolerate. Throughout history, emergencies have often accelerated political transformation. During moments of fear, governments can pass laws faster, expand powers quicker, and introduce systems that would normally face resistance. Now, think carefully. I want you to think carefully at this point. What happens when future outbreaks emerge in an era dominated by artificial intelligence and mass digital surveillance? Think about that. Many of us have never thought about that, and we wonder, how are we going to survive under these circumstances? The tools available today are far more powerful than they were even a decade ago, even 5 years ago. Artificial intelligence is no longer science fiction. AI systems can now monitor faces in crowds, track online behavior, analyze movement patterns, predict criminal activity, which we have to talk about how AI is going to control crime and violence, and flag suspicious individuals automatically. Some governments already are AI-assisted surveillance systems, or use, I should say, AI-assisted surveillance systems in airports, cities, transportation hubs, and public events. So they're already using it. Supporters say these technologies improve security and efficiency. Critics warn they could become tools for mass control. Now, combine AI surveillance with emergency powers. Imagine a future outbreak. Imagine climate disasters increasing. Imagine social unrest or food shortages. Governments may argue that constant monitoring is necessary for public safety, and millions may accept it willingly as we normally do. This is where things become serious for small regions like the Caribbean. We tend to love to blame our governments when in many cases we are the ones who ought to be blamed. Because small island nations often lack the economic independence to resist international pressure from powerful organizations and foreign governments. Over the past few years, the phrase climate lockdowns has become increasingly controversial. Some dismiss the idea completely. Others point out that governments already use emergency powers during hurricanes, blackouts, and natural disasters. And we should be following what is happening in Cuba because similarly, what is happening there is going to happen right throughout the world. Now, imagine a future where climate emergencies become constant: heat emergencies, energy emergencies, food emergencies, water emergencies, travel restrictions tied to carbon emissions, mandatory digital tracking systems for environmental compliance. This may sound extreme today, and many people will say that you are an extremist, but you don't understand what is happening in the world, and that is why you say what you're suggesting. But many policies once considered impossible became reality during global emergencies. And here is the key question or the key issue. When populations become accustomed to emergency governance, extraordinary measures slowly begin to feel normal. This is how societies change psychologically, not all at once, but step by step, crisis after crisis, emergency after emergency, restriction after restriction. So right now, I think we have become adapted to government restrictions, haven't we? Until eventually people forget what normal freedom even looked like. Remember when you could go to the through the airport without being checked and your thing have to be going through all these surveillance. That happened after 9/11, and people just go to the airport as if that is normal, right? They think that that is normal to be searched and to what's going to happen next? We're going to have to pull off our clothes? I don't know, but this is what people have taken and they just comply until all their freedoms are taken away. The Caribbean occupies a very fragile geopolitical position. Many Caribbean economies depend heavily on tourism, foreign investment, international loans, imported food, and external institutions. That dependency creates vulnerability. If global organizations establish new international standards tied to health emergencies, climate compliance, digital identification systems, or AI governance, small Caribbean nations may feel pressured to comply quickly. And we already know how rapidly policies can spread globally. One country introduces a system, then another, until suddenly the system becomes international. The Caribbean has often served as a region where foreign economic and political models are imported from larger powers. So the question becomes, will Caribbean governments project or protect, I should say, civil liberties in future crisis? Will Caribbean governments protect civil liberties in future crises or simply follow international trends? They're going to follow the trends, don't you think so? Because that's how they get control. History repeatedly shows that emergencies reshape societies. Wars expanded state surveillance, terror attacks expanded security powers, pandemics expanded health authority, economic crises expanded financial control, and each generation is told this is necessary for safety. Now, to be clear, not every emergency response is evil. Governments do have responsibilities during disasters and outbreaks, but citizens also have responsibilities to question, to debate, and to remain aware of how quickly temporary systems can become permanent structures. Because freedom is rarely removed overnight. It is usually reduced gradually during moments of fear and uncertainty. The future may not look like old-fashioned dictatorship. It may look technological, efficient, convenient, automated. A system where AI determines risk levels, where digital IDs control access, where surveillance becomes invisible, where algorithms decide who is suspicious or whose content should be released. Many people already carry tracking devices voluntarily through smartphones and apps. Facial recognition technology expands yearly. Digital currencies are being discussed globally. AI systems are becoming more sophisticated by the month. Now imagine all these technologies merged during a future global crisis. This is why some analysts warn that the next era of control may not come through brute force alone. There will be brute force, but in terms of the measures, the methods of control, it will be done through technological dictatorship, but through data, dependency, and fear. And people often respond through fear. That's why they went and they had their V's. So here is the real question. Are governments preparing populations for a future of permanent emergencies, a world where outbreaks, climate fears, cyber threats, and instability create continuous justification for expanded authority? And if that future arrives, will Caribbean societies be prepared to defend freedom, privacy, and independent thinking? Or will the region simply adapt to every new global system introduced from abroad? These are difficult conversations that need to be had, and many of us are not having these difficult conversations, but necessary conversations, because once freedoms disappear, history shows they are rarely restored easily. Oftentimes, they cannot and will not be restored. Society is heading toward a collapse. The future is not written yet. Technology itself is not the enemy, just a tool. Emergency responses are not automatically tyranny, but unquestioned power has always been dangerous throughout human history. And it's not just questioning passively, questioning actively. Many of us are just passive questioners in terms of just looking behind the scenes, and we don't try to do it publicly. And the best way sometimes to do it, if governments do not want to give the requested responses, right, is non-compliance. Don't comply. Very important that you understand that. If government is not forwarding, is not advancing the requisite information that is needed in a debate, then don't comply. And in an age of AI, surveillance, climate fear, and global instability, the balance between safety and freedom may become one or of the defining battles of the 21st century. Right? So that I think is going to be this is the age of AI. I remember it was W. Du Bois who suggested that the color line is going to be the problem of the 20th century, but now we have technological dictatorship is going to be or is the major problem of the 21st century. What do you think? Are we witnessing the rise of permanent emergency rule, or are these fears being exaggerated? Leave your thoughts below and like and subscribe and share this video. This is Declassified Caribbean, and we'll see you in the next one. Ciao.